Thank you. Shall we have Mr. Meyrick back then, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Meyrick, ready to carry on?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Meyrick. Can I go back to the CSS system and just ask you one or two questions about functionality? Can I ask you to be shown policy 790, which is in tab 5 of the policies bundle, FSG, and turn internally in that to page 4. And at paragraph 7.5, if we can just have that highlighted, I'll read it. It says, the command support system, CSS, has a messages screen that records messages sent to and from the incident ground once the CU has been mobilised. Messages sent by Firelink radio relating to FSG calls are recorded here. There is also a conferencing facility on CSS which is available for remote users. Control has CSS access and sensitive information relating to specific calls can be communicated by this method. Now, just asking about that, first of all, looking at what the policy requires or expects of a CSS on a CU, did that functionality that we see there expressed in the policy exist in CU8 on the night?
Yes.
It did. Did you find anything in your operation of the CSS system that would indicate that there was a problem with its functionality at all?
Like I said earlier, I started at the computers. I most probably started at the CSS, but I never actually used them.
Right. Okay. Now, just looking at the functionality that the policy indicates should be available, and you say was available, it looks as if the screen records messages going both ways, both from control to the incident ground and from the incident ground to control.
Yeah.
Did it do that on the night, do you think?
Like I said, I didn't refer to the computers on the night or the CSS.
You didn't use it. You didn't use it at all, is that right?
I don't think I did. I think, to the best of my memory, I'd started the generator, I was starting the computers, turn the lights on, everything else, getting it ready when I could hear control trying to contact Golf 271.
Okay. And just in the next or second sentence of that paragraph on the screen there, it says messages sent by Firelink radio relating to FSG calls are recorded here. What is Firelink radio?
I think he's referring to the main scheme radio. And again, this is what I was referring to earlier when I was saying messages between myself and control, between the machine that I'm on, Charlie Uniform 8, and control are all recorded, so we can refer back to them later.
Right. Would that mean that if you were communicating with the control room about FSG calls by mobile, by the brigade mobile, then those messages wouldn't be captured by the CSS?
I don't think they would be, no.
No. So why would it be, or was it better for you to communicate with the control room by brigade mobile rather than through the radio?
It wasn't a decision that I took. It was control who contacted me by mobile phone.
Okay.
From my point of view, it was certainly a method of passing that information that was easier. It's easier to pass information by mobile phone than it is by main scheme radio.
Okay. And I know it's an if, but if the CSS system had been used to communicate FSG information from a control room to CU8, would that information have been visible or accessible, for example, by the incident commander by remote use?
The incident commander being remote from the command unit?
Yes.
No. The only way that could happen is we could print the messages off and take them out to him.
Right.
It takes some moments for those messages to be recorded onto the CSS. Okay. So it doesn't happen instantaneously. We have to wait a few moments, it'd come through, and then we could print it off.
I see.
But by which time, in all honesty, the method we were using would have been a lot quicker.
I understand, thank you. But just in terms, so I can just really understand this functionality, it says there's a conferencing facility on CSS available to remote users. Is that a voice conferencing facility, or is it a visual conferencing facility where you can see the messages on on the system visually?
To be honest, it's a system that's not used very often at all. To the extent that I have never used that. I'm aware that we've got it, but again, the system that we had passing the information over the mobile phone was the easiest way of passing that information.
Okay. And just, I'm sorry to grind on with this. It says then control has CSS access and sensitive information relating to specific calls can be communicated by this method. What does that mean? Does that mean control can access the CSS and then type in sensitive information about specific calls so that they're on the screen in the CU?
Yes. Names, for an example, are something that wouldn't be passed via main scheme radio in case somebody else intercepts it. And as may have been referred to earlier, all frontline appliances have speakers on the back of their machine, so it makes sense that you don't, for obvious reasons, you wouldn't want names being transmitted backwards and forwards. That is one way of passing the information. The mobile phone is another way of passing that information as well.
I see. Another question. You explained, and we'll look a little bit more in a moment, about the move from CU8 to CU7. I should have asked you earlier, why did you need to move from CU8 to CU7?
Just because that had been labelled as a designated FSG CU.
But given that it arrived on the fireground half an hour later, and given that you were already operating fire survival guidance calls from within CU8, do you know why it was thought necessary to change CU8 to CU7?
It wasn't a decision that I made.
Do you know whose decision it was?
I believe Group Manager Welsh was the IC at that point. But no, I'm pretty sure it was his decision for us to move across.
Right.
Why he made that decision, it wasn't anything completely out of the ordinary. Sometimes the first attending CU can be designated FSG, but not necessarily. It all depends on what the IC wants done at any given time. So it may be that something else was happening on CU8 that made him want to keep it as the ICP.
Right. And yet, so CU8 would stay as ICP, but you don't know what that was that would prompt that decision?
No. I'd been told to go across to CU7. I didn't question it. I didn't see any reason to question it.
Okay. Did you hear Group Manager Welsh make that decision?
I was told at some point. I can't remember who told me or when, but I know that I was told at some point that to move across to CU7.
Right. Now, you told us this morning, just on a slightly different topic, that all the fire survival guidance information that you wrote down while you were in CU8, you wrote on pieces of paper, you then communicated by radio to Mark Kentfield,
Yes.
Manager Kentfield. He, in his contemporaneous notes, and I don't need to take you to them, but I'll tell you what he says. He says that he helped set up the FSG with Watch Manager Sadler from Hotel 22 over the bonnet of a car and located one watch manager and one firefighter to assist him. Do you remember him doing that?
No, that makes sense, but I don't know of if he did that or how he went about that.
Was Watch Manager Kentfield the only person on the fire ground that you spoke to about the fire survival guidance call messages that you were processing within CU8?
I believe it was, yeah.
Right. You don't remember speaking to Watch Manager Sadler?
I don't recall speaking to anybody else.
Now, can I ask you to look at your own contemporaneous notes? And I'd ask you to go to page 2. And you say there that, and it's the third paragraph, second main paragraph down, Group Manager Goodall and Station Manager Egan had established comms with the bridgehead to pass FSG information, and that's something you put in your statement, we looked at that already. Watch Manager Harrison drew a plan of Grenfell Tower showing each flat so we could record FSG information in a practical, easy-to-read way. We established a key showing numbers of adults, children, and level of priority. Now, I just want to see if I can identify what that looked like. Can I ask, first of all, that you be shown, it's tab 42 of the documents bundle, MET 000015933. Is that the plan of the tower that you're referring to?
Yes.
Can you explain the procedure that you followed in filling it in? I mean, first of all, who held the pen when creating it? Who actually drew the lines and the numbers?
I believe it was Watch Manager Harrison.
Right.
It may have been Watch Manager Peckham, but I believe it was Watch Manager Harrison.
Okay. And whose idea was that?
It was something that none of us had ever done before. We have a poster, a casualty information poster, which we use for fire survival guidance incidents to record the information. It's set out a little bit like the controlling. No, it's not really set out like the control information pad, sorry. It's set, in a rough way, it's set out a bit like this, where you would recall, you would record flat numbers, floor level, things like that. It's at the end of the FSG policy, if you want to refer to that. However, there's only enough space, I think it's for 7 different calls on that pad, for 7 different flats. So there was no point in us using that because we would have needed to use several of them. So we had to come up with another way of doing it. I believe it was Watch Manager Harrison who came up with this idea, which, to be honest, was about as clear a way as you could get of recording what was going on in what flat at any given time.
Yes. And
as far as who was filling out the details of the numbers within the flats,
yes,
I was doing it whilst I was on the phone. We also, because we had information before this was created, Watch Managers Harrison and Peckham were filling that out with the information that we already had as well. This became a bit of a fluid chart, so as the information came into us, excuse me, as it was changing, we changed the numbers on the board.
Okay, I'm going to come to that a little bit of detail in a moment. Just can I take a step back and just put this in its policy context, because I'm interested in the evolution of this
Yes.
method. You refer to the casualty information poster. Can I just take you back then to the policy you referred to, which is policy 790, fire survival guidance calls, tab 5, and we, I think, pick this up at paragraph 7.2 on page 4 of the policy. And I think this is what, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Meyrick, because I think this is what you're referring to. CUs carry a casualty information poster, see Appendix 3, to record information on all the separate FSG calls. This eases the transfer of information between CUs. It's recommended that it is completed in pen to reduce the risk of information being erased accidentally. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
And then the poster itself is at Appendix 3, which is on page 9 internally of the policy. And if we just go to that, is that it?
Yes.
Right. And you can see the detail on the number of columns, and you're right, it's 7. So this was the origin of the idea of the gridded whiteboard, is it?
Yes.
Okay. And can you just help me while I'm on the policy, going back to paragraph 7.2 of the policy, if you would, on page 4. Why would there be transfer of information between CUs?
Well, there was a transfer of information between CUs. We moved from one to another.
Would that be normal? Would that be common?
Like I say, it depends on what the IC requests if he
Right.
wants to keep us, the FSGCU, as the first one in attendance, or move us across. So it is something that happens at FSG incidents.
Okay. In a normal incident where you've got FSGs, would you normally record FSG information on this poster?
Yes.
I see, within the C. And then what would you do with that information? Normally.
The bridgehead would have a forward information board, a FIB,
Yeah.
that has a laminated copy of the same poster. We can then transfer the information so they can record it in the same way that we've got recorded on the CU.
And how would you normally transfer the information from the CU, which is you've written down in the poster, to the bridgehead?
It could be radios, it could be runners.
It could be radios, it could be runners. And if it were runners, what would they be carrying?
They would be carrying copies of the control information pad.
That's Appendix 2, is it?
Yes.
Which is the F61784 form. Same policy, Appendix 2.
Forgive me, I don't know the number of it, but yeah, the one before.
No, right, the one before. That'll, good. Okay, that's helpful. So, going back to the picture at tab 42, who held the pen in terms of writing in the information? Do you remember? You got the information about the flats and the floors, and who filled in the information in the green and black ink?
Most of it was me, but it wasn't just me. A lot of the time I'd be on the mobile phone taking the information and writing it down on there, but at times if circumstances dictated, somebody else would be recording it as well.
Okay, who was that?
So there wasn't one designated person who was stood at the board with a pen recording everything.
Okay. Just in terms of then the history, so we've got the origins, the documentary origins of this, but it's in terms of the history of this whiteboard. We start off with it in blank, and then who started filling it in at the very beginning?
All I can tell you is, as a team, we were all filling it in.
Right. And at the very beginning, were you filling it in from information that you'd taken with you from CU8?
Yes, and the information that was then coming in.
Right.
So we did the information that we already had, we put on there, as well as the new information that we were getting in once we were on CU7.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. And the information that was coming into CU7, how was that coming in? What was the method with which information was coming in from control?
It was the same. It was on the mobile phone to me.
Right. Were you the only person on CU7 once it had started up and running, receiving messages from control?
I don't remember giving the phone to anybody else at any other time. As far as I can remember, I had the phone the whole time.
Right. Do you remember where the CU7 CSS system was working?
Yes, I think it was.
Did you see it working?
Yes, I think I did.
Did the CU7 system crash at any time?
Not that I can remember, but it's not uncommon for it to crash.
Isn't it?
No.
Right. What happens when it crashes?
Try rebooting it, and if that doesn't work, then we'll either carry on without it, or we would use another command unit. With this chart, from my opinion, we'd established a very good way of collecting the information. I'm sure the CSS was used for some reasons, but as far as collecting the information and then passing it on, I don't think we were using the CSS a great deal for that part of our role.
Right. And to the best of your recollection, were any FSG messages coming from control over the radio, RT4?
I don't remember any FSG information coming from the main scheme radio from control once we were on CU7.
Right. Now, just turning on a tab to tab 43 and looking at a different picture of the grid. This is MET 0001594. We can see the full key. Do you remember who invented the key and the colour coding?
I certainly came up with a few of them, but again, it was I think, to be honest, I probably came up with most of those. But if other people realised there was something needed added, then they would add it.
Right. And we can see that some numbers next to some flats are in green, and that looks like it corresponds with adults. Is that right?
Yes.
And some numbers next to some flats are in black. Does that correspond with kids?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's a third element in the key, which is a red asterisk. BA have gone there. But we don't see any asterisks on the grid itself. Can you explain?
I think that's because at that time, as we were speaking about earlier, the two-way line of communications and having updates from the bridgehead as to the actions of the crews, we were hoping to get that information, but as the incident went on, we weren't getting that information. So I think that's why it hasn't been recorded on the board.
Okay. Then what do you... Well, can you see there are red ticks in
Yes.
the third column, fourth column and fifth column from the left? Can you explain what those... And there's one, actually, in the top left-hand corner in the first column. Can you explain what those red ticks are?
I'm afraid I can't.
Mr. Egan, when he gave evidence, initially thought that those had been flats that had been cleared. What was your
It could be.
recollection about what those mean?
It could be, but I can't remember for definite. I can't even... that would be a guess. It may be that it was that, but that would be a guess.
Did any of the information that we see on that grid there, which is obviously a collection of information as it had gathered dynamically through the night until the point when this picture was taken, but did any of that information recorded there represent reports that you were getting back from the tower?
As I say, I wasn't known. I wasn't told about any reports coming back from the tower.
Okay. So you can't help me understand whether any of this information reflects consequences of actions or deployments of BA wearers into the tower?
No, we took the information from control. We recorded it here. We recorded it on the control information forms, passed the information on to the bridgehead, and we didn't get a great deal, if any, information back from the bridgehead. Like I said, I don't know of any information coming back from the bridgehead.
Right. So I mean, just summarising where I think we've got to with this, to the best of your recollection, all of that information on that whiteboard there is information you'd received from brigade control?
Yes.
Okay. And can you just help with a little bit more? You can see that P is in a ring is priority.
Yes.
At that stage, how was prioritisation being carried out?
If flats were affected by heavy smoke or fire, or I know. I think it was just heavy smoke and fire. I know. Sorry, but I know there were a couple of flats where we were told of people with certain disabilities.
Yes. So
In fact, in 204,
yes.
we've written that down there. So I think that may be one of the reasons why that was circled as a priority as well.
And right. And underneath. Thank you. Yeah. And immediately underneath that, you've got 194 with one adult, but also has a P in a ring. So not a child, not a disabled person. What would that signify?
Just the conditions within the flat.
Okay. And do you know whether there was a system of prioritising elderly people or children?
No. We would pass on the information as we would have it, and then it would be down to whoever was in control of crews being committed as to the level of priority.
And then underneath, if you look at the key, underneath P in a ring, there's P in a square, which I think reads priority line gone dead.
Yeah.
Can you just help me with what that signifies?
Yeah, that meant that the member of control staff had been speaking to the occupant of that flat and the line had gone dead.
Were they prioritised because the line had gone dead, or were they already priority calls for whom the line had gone dead?
Like I said, this board was fluid, so it changed. So the chances are those flats would have been P with a circle beforehand.
Right.
And then it would be increased in the level of priority. That information would be passed on to the bridgehead that the line had gone dead.
Right. And then, just to run through the key, there's a little blue dot with a mark next to it, which we can't interpret. Can you help us with that?
The blue one?
Yeah, the dot and it looks like an F. What's that?
No, it looks like somebody started to write something and then decided not to.
Right.
But I had no idea what that is.
And then you've got two more, a green dot, left premise, and a black cross, left flat. In relation to left premise, what's the difference between left premise and left flat?
I can't remember exactly. I can only guess that left premises is having left the building. Left flat may well mean they've moved on to somebody else's flat.
Right.
But I can't remember that for definite.
Okay, but that's you're guessing, but you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of left flat, do you know whether that's left flat as a result of a successful rescue or as a result of self-evacuation?
I'm pretty sure that was self-evacuation.
Right. And
So we would have had an update from control saying these people have left the flat for whatever reason.
Right, that was my next question. Thank you. And in terms of determining priorities, were you involved in determining priorities, or was the prioritisation of these residents, evacuees, done by somebody else?
No, we recorded the information that we got stating the conditions within the flat, the smoke, if there was fire in the flat, and we passed that on to the bridgehead.
Right. At the stage this was being written up, though, a decision had been made about prioritisation, because you put P on the board. So the question is, who was making the decision about whether particular calls should be prioritised?
Yeah, in all fairness, yes, from the information we were getting control, these are the conditions within this flat. Yeah, sorry, maybe I perhaps haven't made that clear, or now thinking about it out loud, yes, we've got that information from control, these are the conditions, that's a priority. So looking at it from that point of view, I do apologise, but yes, we were probably then passing on. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to go back over this in my head.
I know. Take your time. It's okay.
Because this was also being recorded on the control information pad. And certainly what I was doing earlier on, when I was writing the information down, I was trying to write down smoke levels, whatever the conditions were.
Yeah.
So it may be that when a call came through for a flat, we'd pass on, this is what it is, these are the conditions in the flat, and every firefighter who knows about FSGs, every firefighter within London would know that if it's light smoke, it's not a heavy priority. If there's heavy smoke in there, it's a higher priority, higher level of priority.
Yes.
So it would be a common language that we'd both understand.
Yes.
Whether we turned around to them and said, these are your priorities, send people to them first, and then these ones after, in all honesty now, I'm afraid I'm not sure.
Okay.
I was collecting the information, I was writing it down, and then it was being passed on. I didn't have anything to do with the passing on of the information.
Okay. But I mean, somebody in CU7 was recording a prioritisation, and I'm just just trying to get to the bottom of who that was.
if we got a call saying there's heavy smoke logging in this flat, it was logged as a priority. It's not this priority is above that priority.
No.
It's just it's a priority. If there's light smoke logging, that's not a priority.
No.
That's how we were recording it.
I understand. But sorry to press you a little bit more. But a decision was being taken within CU7 as to whether something was or wasn't a priority. And all I'm just trying to get to is, who made that prioritisation decision.
Yes. Now, whether that was passed on from CU7 to the bridgehead, these are your priorities and these are the other ones, or it's just a case of this flat, these are the conditions, this flat, these are the conditions, and so on, I'm afraid I don't know.
Okay. But who was saying in CU7 that's a priority or that's not a priority? Was anyone in CU7 actually making that decision?
It may well have been me. I think if I was taking the calls and I'd been told there's heavy smoke logging in that flat, I would label that as a priority.
Right. Okay. Can I ask you then to look at another photograph? This is at tab 48 of the documents bundle. It's MET 00015936. Now, it looks, and Mr. Egan told us this when he gave evidence last week on the same thing, it looks as if this was set up next door to the left of the whiteboard which contained the flats grid on it. Can you just explain what we see on this whiteboard?
I didn't have a great deal to do with recording of this information. I was primarily dealing with the other one.
Right.
So yeah, it would appear that we were getting some feedback, and that has been recorded on the column on the left.
Feedback from where, do you know?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, with this being 12 months ago, I'm afraid I'm just looking at that. It's not triggering much of a memory, and I'm trying to put it together, so it would be speculation to say what that is.
Okay. Can I then just ask one more question? Did you remember who was recording information on a whiteboard to the left of the one where you were recording information?
No, I'm afraid not.
All right. Can I ask you to look at another document, which is tab 41 of the documents bundle, which is MET 00015930. Do you know what that is? Well, can I say, have you ever seen that before? That list or board? It looks like a laminated board with writing on it.
Yeah, I think that may have been what was first used on Charlie Uniform 8 to record the information before we moved across to Charlie Uniform 7. So essentially that's the same information that has then been put into the grid when we moved across.
Right, I see. And so who wrote that up there? Do you know?
Well, I wrote quite a bit of that, and I think Watch Manager Harrison and Watch Manager Peckham wrote some of that as well.
Right. Okay. And do you know what the red asterisks mean?
To the best of my recollection, I think that was priority.
Right. Now, okay, but and the reason I ask is because although you can see for flat 204 on floor 23, one person disabled, you haven't given that a red asterisk.
No.
Whereas it did get that same flat did get a P in a ring when you got to do the grid on CU7. So are you sure that the red asterisk was priority?
No, I'm not sure. That's to the best of my recollection.
No, you did say.
It was. It may well be that this is the earlier stages of the incident we wouldn't have had a massive amount of resources, and we were only showing light smoke on flat 204, whereas we've got a number of other flats
Yes, I see.
with asterisk. So, whereas a disabled person would be a priority, not as much as people who are in conditions
Right. But
of heavy smoke or fire.
okay. Are you telling me that from your memory or from just trying to work it out on the document you see?
No, that's trying to work it out from what I can see.
Okay.
Not surprisingly, my memory is a little bit hazy.
No, absolutely. No, that's perfectly understandable. Can I then ask you to look at tab 44, which is another photograph? This is MET 000159227. First of all, do you recognise where this was taken?
Yes, this was on Charlie Uniform 7.
CU7. And do you know what that list is on the right-hand side?
The board that says Grenfell Tower on it?
Yeah.
That was a plaque taken from the building.
That's the plaque. And do you know who obtained that plaque?
I think it was Watch Manager Kentfield.
Kentfield. Do you have a memory of that?
I'm quite sure I do.
Right. Do you know where he got it from inside the tower?
No.
Well, did he get it from inside the tower?
I think he did get it from the tower, yeah.
Okay. Do you know at what stage in the incident Watch Manager Kentfield obtained that plaque?
No, I don't. But the reason why it was brought onto CU7 was to help us with having an understanding of the layout of the building. How many floors, how many flats on each floor.
Right. In that connection, can I just ask you something slightly different? Do you remember any discussion with anybody about getting hold of the plans for Grenfell Tower?
I didn't have a discussion with anybody for getting the plans of the tower.
Do you know whether Mr. Kentfield was interested in getting a flat floor plan?
As a general rule, we certainly would be trying to get that, but I don't know of any efforts that Watch Manager Kentfield made to get it.
You don't? Okay. And he says in his contemporaneous notes that he obtained a flat floor plan and sent this to the FSG CU7 via a runner. Do you remember getting those?
I don't remember that, but that may well have happened.
Let me see if another document just triggers a memory while we're on the subject of plans. Can I ask you to be shown LFB quadruple 01968, page 49. So LFB quadruple 01968, page 49. Now here are some plans of Grenfell Tower. First and second floors, third floor a walkway, and then four typical residential floor, which are the TMO plans. Do these look do these look familiar to you?
They do, but I don't know if they're familiar from the night or whether I've seen them before.
That's my next question.
Or whether I've seen them since, sorry.
Do you remember receiving plans like this, or these plans, on the night?
I don't remember that.
Okay. As I say, according to Watch Manager Kentfield's contemporaneous notes, he got some plans and sent them to CU7 via a runner. You don't remember receiving these?
They may well have done. It's just it wasn't part of the role that I was carrying out.
Very well. Okay. Going back, I'm sorry to do this to you, going back to tab 44 and the plaque, which that's MET 000159227. If you can just get that back up on the screen. Can you tell us how was that used during the night once you'd got hold of it?
That helped us create the grid that you saw earlier.
Ah, okay. Right. And in terms of the timeline on the whiteboard behind it, What's that? Can you help us with that?
There's many different ways of running incidents, and different incident commanders prefer things to be done differently. It's not everything done exactly the same way at every incident. Some incident commanders like to keep a timeline. It appears that at some point we started to create a timeline. If that's 0402, then that's well into the incident.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we decided. Well, timeline, persons hanging from 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th floor on west of building. Yeah, we were getting reports of somebody seen in that area. I think we started to create a timeline. Again, this is the first time I've seen this in 12 months, so I'm just trying to jog my memory.
No, I understand. Well, don't speculate about it. Just tell me what you remember, if you can.
So we started to record some of the details, why we would have stopped. It may be that we stopped recording it because we realised it wasn't the best way to record it. As you can see, it's a bit cramped. Yeah. Or maybe there were just no more reports from that moment, from that last recording. I'm afraid I don't know which it would be.
Okay. Can I just ask you this? It looks, though, as if this information is detailed information about what's happening in or at the building. Was that information coming from the fireground or being routed to CU7 via control?
No. With people passing by the command unit, many of which not being firefighters, and even if some were firefighters, not all would have known that we were the FSGCU. So police, for example, would be knock on the door or open the door and come in and say, we've just been told of this. So bits of this information, whilst it's not relevant to the role that we were carrying out, of course we'd try and record it and we'd pass it on to the IC or whoever needed the information.
Right. And again, in that connection, can I just ask you to look at one or two further documents? Can I just ask you to be shown, again, it's LFB 0001968, and I just want to start with page 44 of that. And just to tell you what these are, we are told that these are documents from CU7. I can't help you any more than that. And this is at page 44, a control information form with a priority on it. Flats 123, floor 15, 113, floor 14. Line gone dead, and the time is 0321. Additional information, call from, now that looks like CU, but can you help what that means, with what that means?
I wasn't filling these forms out. It looks to me like it was the information. Again, I'm having to speculate here, I'm afraid, because I didn't fill this out. No. But it either could be because I'd taken a call over the phone, or it could be, as happened a couple of times, people approached us and said, I've been speaking to somebody within the tower.
Okay. And then if you look at page 45, you can see that this looks like, this is identical, but it looks like one of the carbon copies underneath the top copy, or at least a subsequent copy, because it's got the same information in slightly fainter writing. Can you see?
Yes.
And then underneath, under additional information, just underneath where it says call from CU, it says, or someone has added, flat 113, 4-person left building. Do you know, or can you account for how that document, or that copy, had that extra writing on it?
No, I can't. I mean, what can happen with these forms, they're filled out, the sheets are sent to whoever needs them, and then if we have further information to change it, it's then a bit of a job because all 4 copies have gone in different directions.
Right.
So it may be that we've distributed them and we've had an update on that particular call and we've just had to write it in pen over the top. I'm not saying that that's what happened in this case, but that is what can happen with the control information pads.
Yeah, I see. Just out of interest, when you do these in CU7, were you using these quadruplicate control information documents?
I wasn't, and I didn't to start with for the reasons I gave earlier.
Yes.
But we did, I didn't. Other members of the team that I was working with
Yes.
did then go back through all the calls we had, and I believe for every single call, they filled out one of these control information pads.
And then did they distribute the yellow copy, blue copy, and green copy to runners?
I believe they did. Where exactly they went to, I don't know. I would assume to the bridgehead. I don't know if any copies went anywhere else. But,
Right.
yeah, I believe they did.
And how many copies were retained in CU7?
A copy of all of them would have been
Sorry,
kept.
that's a bad question. When I say how many copies, I mean was how many of the four, the white, yellow, blue, or green,
Right.
were retained?
I'm afraid I don't know. I don't know how many were distributed.
Right. My question really is it possible, to the best of your recollection, that the information, flat 113, four-person left building, was information which had come back to CU7 and was being recorded by whoever who was writing on these control information forms?
It could be.
Right. And how would that information have come back? You
How
mentioned
would that information
You mentioned
come back?
people coming to the command unit itself.
It could be a further update from control to me. It
Right.
could be a runner coming from the bridgehead. It could be a passerby who'd spoken to somebody inside the building. I'm afraid a number of different reasons.
Right. But was there a systematic means of communication from the bridgehead back to the command unit of
Not that I knew of.
what was happening on particular deployments?
Not that I knew of.
No. So you were reliant. I think to summarise your evidence, you were reliant on people stopping by and knocking on the door of the command unit,
I wouldn't
runners.
say we were reliant on that. It just happened on a number of occasions.
I've got a similar run of questions on pages 47 and 48. We can take this quickly, I think. 47, control information form, flat 74, 10 floor, people on roof, timed at 2:16. And then we see the same thing on the copy at page 48. We'll just turn to that. But now we see other information, G34, Louisa de Silvo at the top, and Watch Manager Sadler, H22, Paul. Someone's written that on that. Do you know whether that information would have been inscribed within CU7 or somewhere else?
It looks to me like the first copy is the one that's been completed on the command unit. This yellow copy is then being distributed, and somebody else has written on it.
Just one more document in this run. If I can just ask you to look at page 1968, sorry, LFB 0001968, and look at page 27. No, let me start with page 12, if I can. Page 12. Yes. Leaving aside the content of this document, the scheme of this document is what? What is this format?
This is me recording information. I believe it's me. At what point, I'm afraid, I'm not sure.
Right. And is this from a pad?
That's the control information. No.
It's not.
No, this is just a message pad. So when we send messages to control, we fill it out on that pad.
I see.
So I've just used it as a blank pad for the sake of this.
Okay. And will this pad be available in CU8 and CU7?
Yes.
Right. And then turning on, if you can, just to page 27 within the same LFB relativity number. This is a blank piece of paper, or a non-format piece of paper, which says at the top CU7, and then it looks like De Silva or De Silvo. Do you recognise the handwriting?
No, I don't.
It's not yours?
No.
Okay. And then it says Brett Loft IC. Does that make sense to you?
I understand what is meant by that, yes.
Do you remember anybody do you remember being told, or do you remember anybody discussing the fact that Brett Loft had been made incident commander?
No.
Okay. Can you account for why somebody's written Brett Loft IC here?
No, I'm afraid not.
Okay. All right. Can I just go now back to your statement and go to page 2? At the very bottom of the page, you've got 2 paragraphs. The last but one is generally about stay put policy, and the last paragraph says the guidance was changed at Grenfell. Station Manager Olive asked me to confirm with Assistant Commissioner Andy, and that says OE. It should be Rowe, I think, Andy Rowe. Oh, tell me if that's wrong.
Yes.
I've assumed that that's what you mean. That control staff could change their advice to callers, which I did. I relayed back to Station Manager Olive that the advice had been changed. I cannot recall what time all this occurred. I read all that to you. So I have a number of questions. You say I cannot recall what time all this occurred. Did it all occur at once, or did what you're relating there occur over a period?
Station Manager Olive, I've been speaking to over the mobile phone, at some point said to me words to the effect of, can we change the advice we're giving to callers? I then would have to run that past the IC. I believe I used a handheld radio to contact Charlie Uniform 8, the ICP, to ask them to put that message to AC Rowe. And it was within 5 minutes at the most that they got back to me to say yes to change the advice. So I passed that on to Station Manager Olive.
So it all happened quite quickly?
Yes.
And do you remember who the incident commander was at the time of that discussion?
It was AC Andy Rowe.
Andy Rowe. Okay. Now...
sorry, but you got me questioning myself now.
Well, I didn't mean to.
I can't say for definite now that I know that. I knew we weren't... I was so consumed with my role of collecting the information over the phone, passing it on to my colleagues on the CU, that I didn't know a great deal of what else was going on. No. So changes in command was something, it wasn't necessary for me to know that as a priority. My priority was dealing with what I was doing. Okay. I knew subsequently later on that AC Rowe was the incident commander, so I think it's just after the incident I put 2 and 2 together and thought that he must have been the IC then. I can't confirm now that I know it was him.
All right, well, let's see if we can take this a little bit more in stages. First of all, do you remember how Station Manager Olive communicated to you this message?
Mobile phone.
Mobile phone. And prior to getting that message from Station Manager Olive by mobile phone, had you been aware of what fire survival guidance, so far as stay put was concerned, was being given by control room officers to callers?
It certainly was my assumption, because that's our default procedure, and I'm sure that would have been confirmed with the conversations I was having with control. It's our default setting for incidents like this, so there's no reason why I would have thought it would have been anything other than that.
Okay. Were you aware of whether there'd been any discussion of the stay put policy by anybody at the incident ground before getting the message from Station Manager Olive?
No.
And did you overhear any discussions between any of the officers that came on either to CU8 or to CU7 when you joined it about changing the stay put policy?
No, that doesn't mean they didn't happen, but I wasn't aware of them.
Okay. Having spoken to Station Manager Olive, do you remember what was the actual change in the advice that he was passing on to you?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Well, in your statement, you say you say that Olive asked you to confirm with Andy Rowe that control staff could change their advice to callers, and you did. Now, what was the change?
As far as I knew, it was, as opposed to stay put, it was evacuate if possible.
Right. Do you know, or did you get a sense from Station Manager Olive that he was aware of the conditions inside the lobbies and the stairwell in Grenfell Tower at the time of that decision to change the advice?
Would he have known what the conditions were like inside?
Well, my question is, did you get a sense that he knew what the conditions were like inside?
I can't answer that question, I'm afraid.
Okay. Did you ask yourself, or did you have any thoughts about whether it was safe to change that advice at that stage?
No, I couldn't give a valid opinion on that because I didn't know what the conditions were like inside myself.
Did you... Well, except that you had been receiving FSG calls
Yes.
and about density
I
of smoke on different levels.
In
but-
people's flats,
In
yes.
people's flats. So right. So is this right? You weren't getting any information from control about what the conditions were like in the lobbies and in the stairwell?
Certainly not the stairwell. It may well have been with lobby areas. There's heavy smoke outside the flat. We can't get out. There was, I'm sure there were messages to that effect. There was a lot of messages.
Right.
And yeah, I can't remember. There were so many messages, I can't remember any individual ones.
Right.
I just remember a general picture of them.
Yes. Okay. And you say in your statement that you were asked to confirm with Andy Rowe. Do you remember whether Station Manager Olive asked you to communicate with him, or did he ask you to communicate with the incident commander?
No, it would have been with the incident commander. I'm afraid that's me making an assumption, knowing that AC Rowe had been in charge by the end of the incident. That's me assuming he was in charge then. He may not have been.
Right. Do you remember who it was you spoke to about the change in stay put advice?
It would have been one of the command support staff, so somebody else like myself on Charlie Uniform 8.
Right. So did you have a conversation with the incident commander directly about
I didn't directly know.
You didn't. Do you know who did?
I think it might have been Watch Manager Kempfield I spoke to on CU8, but it might not have been. I'm sure it was one of the other staff, though.
You say on CU8. I think by that, was that while you were still on CU8, or were you?
No.
you were
I
moved
was
to
speaking
CU7?
to that individual on CU8. I was on CU7.
Right. Oh, I see. Okay. So let me just get this right. When you communicated, when you were told to communicate the change in stay put advice by Station Manager Olive, you communicated it to somebody who was on CU8, did you?
Yes.
Right. And just to ask the question again, do you remember who that was?
No, I think it might have been Watch Manager Kempfield, but I'm not sure.
Was Watch Manager Kempfield back on CU8 by then, or might he still have been on the incident ground out?
If it was him, then he must have been.
Right. I see. And you say in your statement, which I did, I relayed back to Station Manager Olive that the advice had been changed. How soon after speaking to whoever it was you spoke to on CU8 about the advice, were you able to go back to Station Manager Olive and confirm that the advice had been changed?
Straight away.
Straight away.
I may even have been on the phone to him at the time.
Okay.
I only say that because I spent so much of the night on the phone to him.
Yeah. And after the advice had changed, or rather after you had communicated what Station Manager Olive had asked you to communicate to those on CU7, did that change the role that you were carrying out?
No.
Did that change Do you think that changed the nature of the advice that, from what you could tell, Control were giving callers?
No, not that I remember, no.
Do you know of any way in which the change in advice was communicated by Control to callers?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No. Just to go back to your last question, though, the calls coming through from Control to me before and after that decision was taken, there was no noticeable change in the advice coming through.
Right. Thank you. I've got one more question, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you just to go back to a picture. If you can please go back to the picture at tab 43, which is MET 00015924. It's just another point of detail. You've got numbers which have black or blue rings around them. So, for example, 133, you've got a green 2 and then a black 2 with a ring round it. Are you able to help us with what that signifies?
The key states below, green is adult and black is children.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just trying to... I'm afraid I don't remember. The circled numbers, I don't remember.
Okay.
If you look further up, against 153, you've got a black 5, which would be
Adult
children,
yes.
and then you've got a black 3 in a circle. Does that help you remember anything?
Yeah, is that not a blue 3? Is that black?
Well,
It could be.
Either way, no, I'm afraid I don't.
Okay.
I can't remember.
So you can't help because you've got 4 adults, 5 children, but then a black 3. So you don't know what that means. It's a good example. And 176, if you could just have, there's another one. This might help. But 176, all you've got there is a 3 in a circle. Do you remember what that might signify?
No, I'm afraid not.
Okay. All right. Mr. Meyrick, thank you very much indeed. I have no further questions for you. Mr. Chairman, I don't know whether you've got any further questions.
no, I have no further questions.
No, well, thank you very much. I just wanted to say I'm extremely grateful to you for coming to the inquiry and helping us with our investigations. We're extremely grateful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, well, I would endorse that, Mr. Meyrick. We rely on having good evidence from the people who were there at the time so that we can understand what was going on. And I think the evidence you've given about how fire survival guidance was communicated is going to be very helpful. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, would you like to go with the usher? That's it. Then you're free to go. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Chairman, thank you very
Yes.
much. I'm afraid to say that we do not have any further witnesses for this afternoon, so it's an early finish.
Well, I don't think many people will be blaming you for that.
Well, I hope not. We do have our next witness tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, if that's an appropriate start time, and that will be Joanna Smith.
Good. All right, thank you. Nothing else we need do today.
Not today, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So we'll break there and resume at 10 o'clock tomorrow, please. Thank you.